Good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 3, our first session of day 3. I am here with Laura Petherbridge and super excited. Oh my goodness, you guys, her list of credentials is so long. Oh my goodness. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to hit a couple highlights, and then I just want you to go back into the group and look at that long list, and then click to her website and her Facebook pages and just all the things, because this woman is incredible. So Laura Petherbridge, she serves couples and single adults with topics on spiritual growth, relationships, step families, co-parenting, single parenting, divorce prevention, and divorce recovery. She's an international speaker and author. She's written 4 books. I'll let you read about those, but specifically the Smart Stepmom, because that's what she's here today to talk about. It's the Smart Stepmom, co-authored with step family expert Ron Deal and endorsed by Gary Chapman. And if you don't know, he's the one who wrote the 5 love languages, not love. She's spoken at the Billy Graham Training Center. She's spoken for Lifeway, Family Life, Hearts at Home, Sharpens Iron conferences. It goes on and on and on, and TV and radio broadcasts. It's just, it doesn't even fit on my whole screen. I have to scroll down. So today we have Laura Petherbridge here to talk to us about step parenting during this whole virus. Welcome, Laura.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you, and you're very kind with those accolades.
Well, I mean, seriously, it's just like, wow.
Yeah, I think
Tell us in your own words a little bit about you.
Okay. Well, I grew up in a home that was a divorced home. My parents divorced when I was 8. And so I had one goal in my life. It wasn't to write books or stand on a stage or have any of those accolades. I had one goal in my life, and that is that I would never be divorced. I had lived through it as a kid. I didn't want to live through it as an adult. So I was pretty adamant that divorce would not happen to me. But what I didn't factor into that equation is that it takes 2 people to get married, but only 1 to get a divorce. And so I was about 29, 30 around then when my first husband decided he did not want to be married anymore. He was in another relationship. And so I went through a divorce, which was the worst up to this date. I'm 64 now. Up to this date, the worst experience of my life. I almost took my life during that season. I was so depressed and so devastated. And so I just prayed really hard and, eventually met another man. I met my husband, Steve. We've been married for 34 years. He has 2 sons, and at the time of our marriage, they were 11 and 13. And my reasoning was, well, I've had 2 stepmoms. Certainly that has taught me how to be a stepmom, and this is going to be a breeze. This is no big deal. They have a mom. I don't need to be a mom to them. They already have a mom. They have a dad. And I was very naive to all the complexities that would go into becoming a stepmom. So I've used those 34 years of experience and my divorce experience and all of these seasons of life to try to help others that are in those seasons. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I really enjoy helping people through the difficult struggles because I've been there myself.
Well, my next question was, tell us about your passion, but there you go. You told us. Yeah, you read my mind. So I was also a child of divorced parents. Actually, my biological father passed, and then my mom remarried. So I was also a stepchild. And I have a son, and from a previous, actually that wasn't even, we weren't married at the time, but so my husband has adopted him, and we don't share custody. So that was a blessing in itself, that just wasn't part of the picture. But yet I still lived through it with my stepbrothers and stepsister, saw them I saw all of that, and I saw how it affected my mama and my stepdad and all of that. So I can relate to this in so many different ways. So do you have anything you would like to know about the viewers? Did you see the poll that we put in there about, what was it? I did put a poll. How many kids, no, yeah, there was a poll about how many children were in the home. I put several. I'll have to go look while you're talking. I'll go look real quick and see what the poll,
Okay.
and so I can have the results too.
I looked, but I did not see that. So I must have missed that somehow. But it is important to note that there are more step families in the United States, blended families, step families, those two words mean the same thing. So a lot of people don't like the word step, so they've created a new word, blended. And so those two things really mean exactly the same thing. But if we were to take a census, the last census that was taken on this kind of information was about 2010. And at that point, step families were outnumbering first-time biological families. And that wasn't even including those who cohabitate as a step family or live with a significant other and form a step family. So a step family is any circumstance where you are dating, engaged, or married to a person who has children. And that could be the mom, such as what you described in your circumstance. You had a biological child from a previous relationship. And then when you married your husband, he became a stepdad. And so that is a step family or a blended family. Some people only use the word blended when both the husband and the wife have biological kids and bringing them together. Or if they add an ours baby, what we call an ours baby, where the step family, the husband and wife and the step family has a child together. But really those phrases are very interchangeable. So I don't want anybody to get hung up on the word step family or blended. So when I use them interchangeably, I'm fine with the word stepmom. I am a stepmom. I don't see any shame in that. I don't look down on that word or view it. I know Disney portrays a lot of the stepmoms in a pretty evil light. But it's a couple that has come together and they either one or both brought children into the relationship.
Okay. So I did, while you were talking, I typed in the comments under this video, who is part of a step family situation. So hopefully we'll get, I have one response already, and hopefully we'll get some more people just letting us know, who are you, or have you been a part, or are you currently part? So, okay, did you have any tips or advice for women who have stepchildren, just like what you're saying, anyone who is dating, engaged, or married to a man with children? What kind of advice do you have for them right now during this quarantine situation, or self-quarantine situation, or whatever it is that each state has their own little situation going on?
Right. Well, my number one tip would be try to stay out of jail. Because these times are mighty stressful, and they're stressful for biological families. So when you add all the complexities that come along with a step family, wow, it can really get hard. It can really get overwhelming. And so, the biggest question so many couples are asking in this quarantine situation with step families is, should the kids be going back and forth between the homes? Because of course, many of us are on lockdown, shut down. You're only supposed to stay around your immediate family. You're not supposed to be moving from home to home and location to location. So there's a great deal of fighting and angst and manipulation sometimes going on between the homes. I am not a lawyer, so I am not going to give legal advice about that, because every state has its own guidelines. Some states are saying continue staying by your custody agreement, and that would usually mean most custody agreements today are 50-50, so they stay with the one parent half the time, the other parent the other half the time. But there are also some homes that are like, oh, I know under normal circumstances that's a good idea, but I have a health condition or my child has a health condition, and I don't want my kids or myself or, you know, maybe my mother or my grandmother lives with me, an elderly person. I don't want the possibility of them being exposed by bringing the kids from the other home over here. We don't know what precautions they're taking in the other home. I know some of them are saying, you know, in the other home, they've changed nothing. They're coming and going as they always have. And that's just too high of a risk. So you can see how that would create a great deal of stress. If one parent agrees, the other parent does not agree, if the two biological parents are fighting over that, if one is using it as a time to keep the child away from the other home, which does happen often, you know, a sense of parental alienation. And it could be that that parent is just trying to keep their child safe and healthy, but we may view it as, no, he or she is taking this as an opportunity. So the number of conflicts, just because these kids are living in two homes. So I always want to go back to that with the adults and say, stop expecting the kids to have the reasoning, the thought process, the respect, the ability to think rationally like an adult thinks. Our brain doesn't fully, you know, become fully functional until we're about 25. And so we're expecting, you know, 8-year-olds, 12-year-olds, even 18-year-olds to think rationally during this time when even adults are struggling with the isolation and the issues. So yeah, my first tip is lower your expectations. You and your spouse become a united front. And if you can't do that, then that's a marriage problem. That is not a stepfamily problem.
So your spouse or your ex-spouse?
Well, both. but see, what usually causes the biggest angst is that the biological parent wants the child to go back and forth, and the step parent does not. So you've got a husband and wife, or two people who, you know, significant other, that the one is saying, I want my child to come back and forth. I don't care if we get exposed to the virus. I want to see my kid. And the step parent is going, no, 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 no. I don't want that risk. And so that's the fight that you can control because it's in your home. When it's the ex, you can't control that. You cannot control the other home, how they think, how they act, what they do. You cannot control the other home. So it's in your own home that you have the most power.
Excellent. So how do you recommend, and again, I know you're not a counselor, but how do you recommend you help ease the kids? You know, it's uncomfortable, it's unfamiliar, it's an uncomfortable situation, and especially the smaller ones. I want to go to dad's, and they can't. Or, you know, or how do you help ease their heart, you know, when they're struggling to wrap their head around this situation?
Yes. And that is, it's a popular question, even if they aren't stepkids, even if they're your own biological kids. It's hard to, in an age appropriate manner, explain why you can't leave the house, why you can't go visit your other parent. And so you really, you know, it's a good idea to obtain some resources, in particular on how to speak with kids about things they don't understand, about things that are, you know, that are hard for kids to grasp. And, you know, I know there's parents, biological parents, seeking information on how to do that, explaining what a virus is without terrifying them, you know. And see, this is the issue with kids, especially young kids. They internalize. We think they don't hear. We think they're not hearing what's on the news and all of that, and that is totally untrue. They may not be able to express it or explain it or describe it, but they can tell when you're afraid or when there's anger or frustration. So that's the first thing, is to be very, very careful what your body language and all of that is communicating. Make sure to turn the news off and not have that on in front of the kids. And just keeping them as occupied as possible. And here's where it's different for a stepfamily. If the biological parent is home, that parent should be taking the majority of the responsibility for doing that. Especially as a stepmom, we have a huge area where we step in, and it allows the biological parent to step out. It gives them a big break. It lets them off the hook. And sometimes that's a good thing. For example, if your spouse, your significant other, has to work from home right now, and those kids need to be staying away from his office, okay, I get it, you know. But as soon as he's done working, it's time for stepmom to be able to go into her bedroom or her office or the kitchen or wherever to get a break from his children or from, you know, your significant other's kids. And so that there's a one big tip is don't parent more than the parent.
That's powerful right there.
And it is a very common mistake that step parents make.
Yeah. And you know what? I could see myself, the type of personality that I am, I could see myself when the parent is, well, even in my own marriage, I mean, with our kids, you know, when dad's not parenting, you know, for whatever reason, I can see myself trying to fill that void. And so, I mean, if you have to be careful when it's a stepchild, because you're not, and I can tell you from experience, I told my stepdad, "You're not my dad." But I would take direction from my mom. But boy, when he tried to direct me in a way that I was going to be rebelling against, I would tell him so. "You're not my dad. You can't tell me that." I know that was
exactly right.
And I got straightened out, but that's what kids do.
And see, the step parent can only do that, can only set some boundaries or set some rules or guidelines if the biological parent raises he or she to that level of authority. So for example, you know, we'll use the dad and the stepmom scenario, or your situation. If the biological parent doesn't say, "Okay, Jessica, when I'm not here, your stepmom, Laura, is in charge. You and I have talked about what the boundaries are. You know, you need to be doing X, Y, and Z. And so if you're not doing that, and if you're being rude to her or give her a mouth, there is going to be a consequence for that. And this is what it is." Now, the difference in a stepfamily, biological mom or dad, is that you need to cushion that instruction to your child with encouragement and love and affirmation. So it would be wise to start out with, "You know, Jessica, I know you have to live in 2 homes and that is extremely complicated to do. I am so sorry that you have to be raised in 2 homes. And I know that that's confusing sometimes, and the rules in our house are probably different than the rules at the other house. And you know what? As your parent, I love you, and I never wanted that for you. But I can't change that. And I want this home to be peaceful for you. I want it to be healthy for you. I want you to feel safe here." And so we've had to set up some boundaries and guidelines and some chores and some rules. And if you think some of those are too much or too strict, I want you to come and tell me. It's okay to do that, but I might not agree with you. but your stepmom, your stepdad is in charge when I'm not here. And so I know that's going to take some time to adjust to, and I care about you. I don't want you to think that I'm ever dumping you on your stepmom or stepdad, and that I'm abandoning you, because I love you and I'm here for you. But these are the guidelines, and I'm setting those because I love you. And so it's important for the parent to do that in a loving, kind, nurturing way, but set a boundary and then follow through with it. And so, and that's the hard part.
Yeah, the follow through.
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a hard part in life in general.
absolutely.
Um, what do you do, or how do you help? How do you help one of your kids who their kids are saying, well, my stepdad this, and again, I guess it's going to be the resources, well, in my situation, and even though we're still in this quarantine situation, so say one family will let their children go to the other house, and then the other family won't. And then the kids are on their phones comparing notes, or on social media comparing, well, my mom this and my mom that. And I guess you would be pointing them back to those resources on how to help kids understand the situation.
Absolutely. And it's key in a step family, before you form the step family, preferably before you move in together, before the marriage, before you become a couple, in under the same roof, to start out by, first of all, get some resources and learn about step families, but to tell the kids, in a blended family, in a step family, nothing is going to be fair. There is no fair in a step family. And the reason there can't be normal kind of fair is because you live in two separate homes. Half of the time you go with your dad, half of the time you go with your mom. And that other home has different guidelines, rules, boundaries. One of the biggest ones I deal with today is the phone, where one home will allow all kinds of things on the phone for kids to have on their phone. The other home doesn't want all of that stuff. They don't want their kids exposed to all of that stuff. So it's a huge fight. And the kid gets really mad because, well, why, when I'm at one house, am I allowed to use TikTok, and I'm at this other house and I can't? And so there is no such thing as fair in a step family. Now, does that mean when the child is residing in your home, that when you buy birthday presents, that you get one kid an iPhone and you get the other kid a t-shirt? No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the kids have to understand from the get-go, and it's probably something you're going to have to reiterate over and over and over again. I can't control what goes on in your other parent's home. And so I'm sorry that's so confusing for you. A resource I'd love to recommend. I did not write it. It is specifically about the kids, but I'd like to recommend it because it's so phenomenal. And it's called Between Two Worlds by Elizabeth Marquardt. Between Two Worlds by Elizabeth Marquardt. And that, in my opinion, is every step family should read that book, in my humble opinion, even if the step kids are grown adults. See, we're talking mostly about little step kids right now, but these issues cross over into the adult step kids also. And so they struggle just as much, and sometimes even more than the little ones do. So, but Between Two Worlds, it will really help you to understand why it's so complicated for these kids to absorb the rules and the boundaries and their emotions. And it'll help you to learn how to describe what's going to be fair and what isn't. So that's a tough one, because kids don't get it. How come my stepbrother gets to do this and I have to do this? That is step family living.
Yeah. Yeah. So are there, aside from the, going from home to home, oh, by the way, on the subject of the phones, I know, or I have known a family, I don't, the boy's grown now, but where the mom carried a cell phone, a separate cell phone number for the son, and the dad. So the boy walked around with two phones, and you never knew, which number. If I would have to know he was at dad's house in order to know which phone to call and stuff. So, and then that's just craziness too, it's unfortunate, but it's going to be awkward for the kids.
Well, absolutely. And what does it communicate? My parents cannot come together enough. And I realize sometimes one parent is completely unreasonable. The problem is we always think it's the other parent that's being unreasonable. I do a lot of life coaching for step couples, regardless if it's the stepmom or the stepdad. And I do a lot of life coaching, and part of my job is to get them to look in the mirror to what things they may be doing that is exacerbating the problem with the other home. And so that's hard to do, because then I have to admit, maybe I'm doing something to contribute to this. But if you want to heal that frustration and estrangement for the child, it's going to require that you usually need a third party, not somebody connected to you emotionally, definitely not your spouse. They usually see it through the same lens that you do. Mm-hmm. And so it's often good to have a third party come in and say, okay, let me evaluate both sides here and give you some instruction.
Okay, so I got notes going all over the place. Let's see if I have any questions yet. Well, I see someone that says, I am part of a step family situation. I'm just going to read, there's just a few right here on my screen. How can people possibly be that selfish that they would expose their children to this virus? And I think she was referring to, people, yeah. And then somebody said, yes, so you must have said something that they agreed with. And then someone's, that is so good. And I think it was that don't parent more than the parent comment when they said that. So, so during this virus, are you still doing coaching and things with step parents?
Oh, absolutely. I'm actually on the phone more now than I ever was. Yeah, absolutely. Because, they're stuck at home. They're feeling the stress. The two homes are fighting. And they really need a third party to come in and say, okay, we never had to deal with this before. What are some steps that we can take, And often, again, it's the couple that is disagreeing. I had one situation where the kids spend the majority of their time at the dad's house. He's the full-time parent. They occasionally visit their mom once, maybe twice a month. And so he has primary custody, and he is remarried. So the kids have a stepmom, they're teenagers. And, they were debating, should we go back and forth? And this dad even has some pretty major health issues himself. And the kids wanted to be back home with him and the stepmom. They didn't want to stay at their mom's house. And so he said to his wife, I would rather expose myself to the illness, to the virus, even with the health issues that I have, than have my children thinking I don't want them here, or that I don't care, that they aren't welcome during this time. So he was very clear to say to his wife, because she was worried the kids were going to bring the virus into the home, and her husband was going to get sick again. And so once he said that to her, she was like, okay, he loves them so much that he wants to be with them regardless if this is dangerous for him or not. Mm-hmm. Now, and so she accepted that, even though that did mean she could get exposed, or the ours child could get exposed, but she had to respect her husband's desire enough to be with his children to let go of that concern. And again, think about how hard that is to do. That's a challenge to be that selfless. And, I always tell people that being a stepmom has taught me more about how to unconditionally love than any other experience in my life.
Mhm.
Because you are constantly loving, 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 and doing, and they may never love you back. They may never want you in their life. You're doing it. I do it because I have a strong faith in God. So I do it first for God. I do it second for my husband. And if the kids eventually welcome me into their life, that's great. But I don't do it for that reason, because I'll end up disappointed or probably becoming very angry with them. And I did that in the beginning. I've learned not to.
Yeah, I don't have stepchildren, and I think that was, honestly, I think God knows that I can't handle them, and that's why I not can't handle them, but I can't handle myself trying to be a stepmom, that would just be so hard for me. But I do try to put myself in my husband's place when I think about situations, and trying to understand why he does some of the things that he does the way he does them,
Right.
So, well, are there any other things that your coaching clients, or even that you see on social media or in the news, that we haven't talked about, that just really strikes you as, wow, step families really have this situation they're grappling with?
I think it helps the step parent and the biological parent to understand that parents and step parents see the stepkids through a different lens.
Mm-hmm.
So let me explain. A biological parent, when they think about their child, they see that child through the lens of love. This child's been in my life. The minute I laid eyes on him or her, took her first breath, I'm in love. And you're thinking to yourself, I didn't even think I could love somebody this much. The step parent sees the child through the lens of responsibility. The step parent wants the child to be responsible, well-behaved, a good citizen in society. That is their primary lens. Now, that does not mean that the step parent doesn't love the child. They just love them differently. You love your own biological kids differently than you love your own. And a lot of people get mad when they hear me say that. Oh, no, I love my stepkids exactly the same. And there are some people that do feel that way, but it's very rare. And the reason it's rare is because your partner had this baby with another person. That union formed a child. And it is not an experience that if you don't have an hours baby, you don't have that with that. So the union is different than it is with a biological child. So it's very important to recognize that the parent and the step parent see the child through a different filter, a different lens. This is why you so often see that a step parent is viewed as being harsher on the child or wanting the kid to be more responsible than the biological parent, because they're looking at them through two different lenses. The other important thing is, when you get married and you and your spouse have a child, and little Johnny is doing something wrong, you may not agree on what punishment or boundary should be set there with that child. The mom and the dad may say, well, I think you're being too harsh. Well, I think you're being too lenient. But never does that mom or dad think the other parent doesn't love the child. You never hear a mom say, well, you think that about Johnny because you don't really love him. And you see, in a step family, that is exactly how the parent often feels. Well, my new wife doesn't love my son the way I do. My new husband doesn't really love my son. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's accurate. They view that child as just a nuisance. But you see, the difference between the biological couple is they would never accuse each other of that. They both love the child. They may disagree on parenting, but they both love the child. Where in a step couple, that step parent's heart and motive is often being questioned on whether they're coming with a pure heart. And sometimes they are, and sometimes they aren't. So, but that's a radically different scenario, and that's why there's so much conflict in a step family.
So tell me about, okay, let me go back. Your book, the step parenting book. Let's see, it's called The Smart Stepmom. How did you come about that name, The Smart Stepmom?
Yes. Well, I actually have 3 books. The Smart Stepmom was the first, and Ron Deal asked me to co-author that book with him. And at first I did not want to. I was working in divorce recovery, and that was complicated enough. I thought, why would I want to add step families to this? Because I know how crazy that is. And so at first I was like, no, I don't think I want to do that. But then after I prayed about it and thought about it, I really sensed that God was nudging me to come alongside Ron. His book, first book, is The Smart Stepfamily. So this was The Smart Stepmom. And so we co-wrote that book together. And I think it's so great, if I can be so bold, I think it's so great because it has Ron's male therapist voice and my female stepmom voice. So I give a lot of, this is how I felt, and he gives a lot of, this is how to handle that. And he also gives the male perspective of the whole thing. And we wrote 2 chapters in the middle for the couple to use together. Most men are not going to buy a book on step families. So we implemented in The Smart Stepmom 2 chapters so that they could use that together as a couple. So, discussion questions at the end of each chapter. I have many stepdads that tell me they love the Smart Stepmom book and that they get more out of that one than they do Ron's The Smart Stepdad, just because there's so much emotion in it. And so, so that's how the name came about, was because Ron had already, started his whole thing called The Smart Stepfamily. So this was an addition to that. So then I wrote 2 more, 101 tips for the Smart Stepmom. That's sort of like a question and answer, sort of, just the most popular questions and issues that come up. I have chapters in there like for the childless stepmom. See, I'm a childless stepmom. I have no biological children. I only have stepkids. And her journey is very different than a stepmom who has biological children of her own. And then I wrote Quiet Moments for the Stepmom Soul. And that is a Christian-based book that I wrote with 2 others. And we do 90 days of devotionals where you can just really get some peace and like, oh God, help me. So that's how that all came about.
Wow. So, and then you just became the Smart Stepmom. It started with a co-authoring situation, and then you just became the Smart Stepmom.
Yes, and I try to be most of the time. I started hosting events. I discovered that stepmoms really need to come together in a live setting. A lot of them go on Facebook and have groups, but those can turn ugly really fast. And it can turn into just a lot of bashing the mother. And that gets you nowhere. So I wanted to help them. Even if the biological mom is a very difficult person or very high conflict, I wanted to step away from just focusing on that. And how can you grow and become healthy and become strong and become smart, even if the step family situation is very complicated? And so I do events for stepmoms. I do life coaching, like I mentioned, for either the stepmom or the couple. And again, I'm a third voice of reason to help them look at it from perhaps a little different perspective so that they can come out of the stresses that they're having. So yeah, it's not the journey I would have chosen. I had no little girl is born going, oh, I can't wait to be a stepmom when I grow up. It's not an easy journey, but you can learn how to survive and thrive in it. And there are numerous things a stepmom or even the biological mom can do to make the journey smoother.
So in your book, 101 Tips, do you have a few of your favorite ones?
Let's see. Yes, I often get a request or a question that starts with this phrase. How can I get my husband to blank? How can I get my stepchild to blank? How can I get my mother-in-law to blank? And the answer to that is very simple, 2 words, you can't. When you hear yourself saying that phrase, how can I get my whatever, usually it's husband, to discipline his kids. That's a good one. That's a popular one. How can I get? That is an indication that you have an issue with enabling, codependency, stepping into a place that you think you can control that you can't control. Because I can't get another individual to do anything. And even as a spouse, it's not my job to make them do anything. I am not his mother. And so what that usually means is, how can I learn to set a boundary that will cause change? Now, see, we like the how can I get my husband to a lot easier than we do how can I set a boundary with my spouse that will cause them to need to make a change in how they're acting, how they're responding. So that's really what love is all about, is if we allow someone to suffer a consequence when they are making a poor choice or a choice that is harming the marriage, harming the home, we can't make them change, but we can set a boundary and a consequence that will allow them to suffer some pain for making that choice. And I don't do that in a mean way, in an inflicting harm, like, oh, wait till you see what's going to happen to you if you don't step up and start doing this. No. That will kill the relationship. But I can say, I'm going to go step into the other room. I'm going to get in my car and take a drive. I am not going to participate in this anymore. And so, yeah, that's probably the most common, how can I get my spouse to do blank or my stepkid to do blank? And you can't. You can set a boundary. And learning how to do that often takes a lot of time because, I was codependent, I was an enabler and didn't even realize it. I thought because I had such a strong personality, I'm not a codependent. I'm not an enabler. I speak my mind. Well, like in the dictionary, when you look up the word enabler, my picture is there because I really was a big enabler. I wanted to rescue everybody. So yeah, that's a big one, and it can heal your family, any family, not just a step family.
That's good for not even step. I mean, that is just great advice for life, for every single person on the planet. That's
Yes.
I mean, yeah, I had an aha moment there. Yeah, self-check time for me. So, okay. So do you have on your website a place where people can go see, like, do you travel a lot?
I do, when there's no virus. I've already had 2 of my events canceled. I had a Mother's Day event scheduled for childless stepmoms and their husband. Mother's Day is often the worst day of the year for stepmoms. Childless stepmoms in particular, because they have no biological children to wish them a Mother's Day. And the kids are usually with mom on Mother's Day. And so for many, many stepmoms, Mother's Day is a horrible day. She just wants to get through it because it's a reminder that she has all the responsibility, all the work, all the laundry, all the everything of a mom, but very rarely is getting the perks or the hugs or the kisses or the recognition or the graduation day where you're standing up there next to the child. So I was hosting a weekend for couples where the woman, the stepmom, is childless And so that was Mother's Day weekend. We had to cancel that. And then I was supposed to be there in Houston with you doing the Blended and Blessed. So that's the next one coming up. And that has now turned into a complete simulcast that can be seen by anybody right in their own home for $19.
Oh,
It's a
wow.
full day with Ron Deal, who is like the king of stepfamilies, myself, but the big name is Gary Chapman, who did write the 5 love languages. He and Ron wrote a book together that just released this year called Blended Family Love. So they're going to talk about how to have love languages and communicate love in the step family. And Bill Butterworth is also a speaker in that. So the 4 of us are going to be presenting. It's called blendedandblessed.com, blendedandblessed.com. And it is $19 for the whole thing. And it's streamed right into your computer, your TV, whatever. So that was going to be a live event, and it was going to be simulcasted. That event goes around the world. And so it's Ron's largest event, but there's still time to sign up for that. It is April 25th, April 25th for that event.
So that's 10 days from now.
Yes.
Got
yes.
it.
Yes.
Okay.
That way you can learn right from your own home, and your spouse can be with you. So that's the great thing. It's for couples.
Yeah, no, that sounds like a great, is 2 full days online, or is it broken up?
You know what? I don't know. I know it'll be all day Saturday. I don't know how many other days the $19. I think it gets you all through Sunday too, but they may have added more days onto that. I know you can buy it in a package where a group of people can watch it. So you could also do that. And then when the virus is over, you can bring other families around. A lot of churches host it, where a bunch of people can come and watch it together. So, but I know individuals can get it for $19, and I know that lasts at least 2 days. It may even last longer than that. I'm sorry, I'm not sure about that.
That's okay. I mean, we had to switch, right, from face to face to online, so things changed. So yeah, I encourage everybody that is a well, let's go back up. Dating, engaged, or married to a man with children,
or a woman. So that's for both the stepmom and the stepdad. So that is for step families, not just stepmoms.
Okay.
So any scenario of step family. You may even have, a step relationship, like say, for example, your grandmother or your grandfather got remarried after your grandma or grandpa died, or they got divorced later in life. You might be a grandchild of that. And this will help. It's for anybody related in any way to a step family relationship.
Wow. So everybody.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So you have a list on your website of upcoming engagements that you have?
Yes.
Except for right now, there's not many until we can travel again.
Right.
What do you have on your website? Any kind of a list of resources for
I do. I have not only the ones that I've written, but also what Ron has written, but I also have a list of resources on other subjects, such as, I deal with a lot of people who have been sexually abused. That is not my area of expertise, so I always point people to that. If you've had childhood trauma of some sort, if you're just struggling to find your worth or to believe you have any purpose or things like that. So I have a whole list of those resources. And then I have a blog that is free that has all kinds of articles typically on step families, but there are some other things like forgiveness, everyday things that we sometimes struggle with. And I'm always adding new content to that. So if you're not seeing what you want today, come back in a couple of days. And I have live, just like you and I are doing here, but it was TV recordings. So I've been on numerous TV programs where I was interviewed, typically again about either divorce recovery or step families. And those interviews are on there. You can link on those for free. It's all for free.
Awesome. So what is the main website that we should go to find access to all of this?
thesmartstepmom.com.
Oh, how easy is that?
Smartstepmom.com. My name will get you there too, laurapetherbridge.com. But let's face it, how many people know how to spell Petherbridge unless you're looking at it?
I had to do it a couple times, before I had it down. I had to practice pronouncing it so I wouldn't mess it up.
Yes, it's not an easy one. So my husband gets mad when people say that. But I'm very honest about it. It's a hard name. So,
Well,
but if
it's
you
unique.
remember
I
it,
think it's hard because it's unique, and it's
yes,
just something we have to intentionally think about when we say it. So,
exactly.
well, thank you so much for everybody watching. I'll put links and things in the unit. Y'all will need to stay tuned to our group because I will keep updating for weeks and maybe even months to come about, so as I, follow Laura, if I see something that I think y'all can benefit from, I'll put it back in there, So, yeah, I'm going to get that to you. And Laura, thank you so much for doing this. I know you're busy and I appreciate you. And I hope when you do come back to Houston, I get to see you.
I hope so too. You're the best slash lady I know.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm trying to take these off right now. So I'm teaching people how to take them off.
I also wanted to share that I do have the Smart Stepmom Facebook page. And so there's a page specifically for stepmoms on there. And I have one for childless stepmoms. That page is private. So if you're a stepmom and you have no biological kids, I have one called Childless Stepmom. And you can look for that too. That one, you have to be invited to join the Smart Stepmom page. That can be for anyone. It is not a private page. But I post all kinds of articles and blogs and events and all sorts of stuff on that page. So, and Instagram too, Smart Stepmom. So any of those.
Awesome. I'll put all those links in the group too. I do already, I think I have just Laura Petherbridge author in our group, so I could put the others in there as well.
Okay.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate it. Thanks.
I hope it's been a learning experience for many, not just those that are in a step family, but for people who have friends or relatives that are in a step family, and maybe you hadn't thought of any of these things. I get that comment a lot. Oh my gosh, I never would have thought of that. Right. So that's my prayer, is that it's encouraged somebody today.
Yeah, and that's the whole purpose of this event, is to, just to give people some hope and encouragement and some positive things to watch and to dwell on.
Yes.
So,
well, thank you for the invitation. I truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I'm going to let you get back to, I'm sure you've got plenty more to do. It is 11:27, so we've been here for almost an hour. I hope everyone has a great day. I will see everyone back at 2:30. And Laura, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day too.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All righty. Bye.